Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, where we question the status quo on society's important issues while mixing in plenty of laughs along the way. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your host, as always, Richard B. Kroll and Mark R. Weaver. Richard's coming to you via Skype again because of the COVID spikes in our area, but we still love you, Richie. How you feeling today?
You know, I'm not, hopefully, knock on wood, feeling the spike of COVID. I feel the same I have every day for 8.5 months. I know it's hitting people out there, but boy, is it weird times, Mark R. Weaver.
Very odd, and I know you're excited, Rich. I'm usually not sensing the amount of excitement that I am today with you, because our brief conversation before the show, for the listeners, usually Rich is, pretty even tempered when it comes into a show, but he is very excited about this episode, and I think it has something to do with his spontaneity. You like that word?
I do.
You're much more of a spontaneous soul than I am, and this show is geared for that. And as we talked about last episode, we're going to do an Ask Us Anything episode today, and Rich is really looking forward to that. But we always start with Rich's tip of the day.
Well,
what say you, Richie?
Before I give the tip of the day, I want to confirm that you're right. I'm a little excited about this episode. We've gotten a ton overflow of listener questions and input for this show, which is exciting. But, full transparency, some of the topics you forced me to do this year bored the pants off of me. So, a lot of times I just go through the motions to accommodate, your libertarian messages out there. But my tip of the day is this. And, we've been very nutrition and diet and workout, and health focused.
Very preachy this year on the diet and exercise.
Yeah, I've gotten a little preachy because I see a lot of people starting to fall apart as they cross certain milestones like 30, 40, 50. But here's one that's kind of makes me chuckle, and I want to get people back on the rails. I'm reading a lot of information, and there's always conflicting science and nutrition about don't eat this, don't eat that. And I'm starting to raise a fuzzy eyeball because, hey, don't eat cashews because they'll do this to you. Don't eat nightshade vegetables like tomatoes and green peppers and red peppers because they'll do this to you. Don't eat oranges because of the sugar content. Don't eat bananas because they'll make you fat. And I'm thinking, people, is everyone now so perfect in their diet where they can delineate from these important, if it's a natural fruit and vegetable or nut, just eat it.
Right.
Why do you people and scientists and all you nutritional geniuses out there start with cutting out potato chips and bread and butter and soda and chocolate? I love how we're now getting into cutting out fruits and vegetables. We haven't even figured out the obesity issue to begin with. So folks, look, cut out the obviously bad stuff. If you have a perfect diet and 4% body fat and you're a bodybuilder or a triathlete, okay, let's segment into the best vegetables, fruits, and nuts versus, the better of those. But to start there, where, I watched some guy walking down the street, he was eating a large pizza and a liter of Dr. Pepper, and he took the tomatoes off. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He goes, well, nightshade vegetables aren't good for you. It's gotten ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to get to the level where you're bifurcating vegetables and plants of which ones are good and bad, that's a good level to be at. Skip the chips, skip the processed foods, the fried foods. Skip all the animal agriculture products, and you'll be on a good path. So, agreed with that tip of the day, Richie. I want to thank our patrons, Mark Zlotnikoff, Eric Weaver, George Muldoon, Chris Barbie, Dr. Dave Nadler, Alvaro Puga, Rick Linares, Darren Tapp, Scott Carney, Larry Helms, and I'm sure some of these folks will have submitted questions and will be mentioned later on in the show. But we want to thank the patrons, as always, for their support. We couldn't do it without you. On our show today, Rich has some idiots of the week. We'll get through them fairly quickly, and then we'll save most of the time for the Ask Us Anything episode that we've been talking about. And the way that's going to work is Rich and I have solicited questions, and they've been coming in and are actually still coming in right before we taped. And we're going to keep it pretty spontaneous. I know most of the questions that Rich has, I've never seen, and vice versa. And even the ones that I have seen I'll speak for myself, I've just kind of glanced at them and not really thought about an answer. I want it to be spontaneous, and I think Rich has got the same idea. So it should be fun. We'll go back and forth for 30 minutes or so. And if it looks like we have too many, then we may do a second episode. We'll figure that out at the end of the show. So, Richie, Idiots of the Week, you got a couple good nominees for me?
I got a couple great nominees, and they're quick. So this will be easy. So a police officer in San Juan, Puerto Rico, has been charged with stealing more than $1,300 worth of goods from a local Home Depot. It was not immediately known if he had an attorney, and unfortunately, Puerto Rico Police Chief Henry Escalera said Officer Leon has been temporarily suspended from the department. You're probably wondering why, this would be a big deal. He made the stolen items in person while on camera, wearing his full police uniform.
I thought you were going to say he was the store security guard in his off time. That would have been even better.
That might have been better. But think about, here's a guy, wearing the blue, wearing the hat, wearing fully, maybe he's got the nightstick and the gun, and he's going around. And it was multiple items too, to add up to $1,300. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the surveillance business, in the public protection business. That struck me as pretty darn funny.
And how about the fact that he doesn't know there's cameras, or if he did, he should. If he didn't, he should. But then the press release also confuses me a little bit, because he was only suspended. I mean, he's on camera as a cop breaking the law. I mean, you'd think that would get him fired, but maybe not in Puerto Rico.
He's just suspended. They'll figure out the details.
All right, nominee number 2.
My boy Larry Helms in Texas just feeds us the Florida idiots, and he has this might be one of my favorite. I wish you could see the picture. It may help. But a Florida man was pulled over red-handed after troopers found him driving around with a large utility pole strapped to the roof of his car. Florida Highway Patrol officials said the investigation began when they received a report of a theft of a downed power pole by a motorist in a small 4-door sedan in Hillsborough County. Officials said that motorist, later identified as 71-year-old Douglas Allen Hatley, loaded the 200-pound pole on the roof of his car, which put a dent in the roof, and took it to a recycling facility where he tried to turn it in for a rebate. Like people taking their cans in for a nickel a can. He was turned away for not having proper documentation and referred to state troopers, who found him driving with the pole still on top of his car.
Was he going to a joust?
You got to. It's. Wait. Here's why. I wish you could see this. It's literally 10 feet over the front of his windshield and hood, and 10 feet behind the car. And the front has the big. It's like 2 feet by 2 feet block that's screwed into the cement, to hold the thing up in the air. And he's got it like duct taped around the top of his car.
Oh, my goodness.
He clearly needed some money, but he's been charged with grand theft and booked into the local jail.
Meanwhile, do you say 71? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 71.
How's a 71? Was he ex-bodybuilder? How's a 71-year-old get a 200-pound thing on top of his car? I mean, I couldn't do that.
Some of these guys have tremendous knowledge of pulleys and leverage from their fulcrum days in school.
I guess the utility company either it had been knocked down or was laying on the side. Sometimes they just lay those things on the side of the road in anticipation of replacing the one that's there. But I don't know anything about recycling, but what do you get for a big log? I mean, I can't imagine there's that much. If it was metal or copper or something, I think maybe you could get some big bucks for it. But that seems like an awful lot of work for pressure treated wood.
No,
I don't even know.
It was a metal pole. It was a
metal,
it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense then. Okay. I thought it was one of those.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, he's trying to get it for the recycling center. I get it. I was off on a tangent. Around our way here in southeastern Pennsylvania, all the utility poles are these, round pressure treated wood basically. So, all right. So that makes it a little bit better. I think, this is a tough one. I got to go with the cop because if 2020 has taught us, taught us a lot of things, but one of the things it exposed that there's some bad cops out there. Not all of them, and certainly not even the majority, but there's a few bad cops. Obviously, the whole George Floyd thing brought that to light. But there's also cops that steal stuff. I was thinking of what's that Denzel Washington character in Training Day? They just do whatever they want because they're cops. So I give it to the cop, and since they're in Puerto Rico, they get a U.S. dollar since they're on our dollar. So I like those, Richie. So now we're going to transition to some fun. And I hope it's fun. There may be some serious questions in there, too, because I like the serious ones, Richie. So I'll throw it to you first. And I think, we'll do it like we did some of the other shows where we, the all idiots shows where we go back and forth. So I'll let you go first. And you even may have some more questions than I do. But I'll let you go first. Let's start out good, Richie. Give me a good question that we can ponder and answer for our listeners.
So I just want to preface this by saying we had a couple different submissions. Some people bulleted like 4, 6, 8, quick questions from the same person. A couple gave us a pretty serious, longer question with a kind of an introduction and background, and then so. We have varying degrees of question types. Before I get into the real serious ones, and some directed at you, I'll let you warm up a little bit. So I'm
not afraid.
No, I know you're not. I'm going to start out. Here's a couple from Ted Kennegalski, Ocean City resident, Ocean City, New Jersey. Retired VP of Finance for a global pharmaceutical company. Ted asks, if you could have only one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Wow, that's easy for me, but it's kind of a provincial answer. And mine would be Pica's Pizza because, and for the listeners that don't know what that is, in the Philadelphia area, there's this pizzeria that puts the cheese on the crust and then the sauce on top. It's a square pie. It's just it's a tradition around where we live, and even though most people in the world don't know about it, that would be my last meal. If I was getting put to death, I'd want a Pica's Pizza as my last meal. How about you?
Well, remember, great answer, and I'm going to be close to you, but this was the rest of your life, not just the final meal. So
yeah, that would be it.
I would have answered pizza in general because although Pica's is also my favorite of all time, I might get sick of it after a month straight, and I might want to mix it up. There's a lot of other great pizzas around the world, but I'll tell you what, I thought about this a step further than you. I would become a fat piece of garbage if I ate pizza, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. So I'm going to go with sushi and all the different types of sushi, whether it's sashimi, whether it's actual sushi or sushi rolls, or all the different types, because I feel I'd be a lot healthier.
So you're adding another dynamic that if I cared about my health and I had to eat one thing the rest of my life, that might be a better way to phrase it. If that was the case, wow, I would say probably salad, because you can make salads like a broad category salad. You can make a salad to be pretty much anything, and so that would be my secondary answer with different criteria. How's that?
Okay, I like it. And here's a second question from Ted. What band did you first listen to and then like and still like to this day?
Okay, so my first band that I listened to that I can remember in the rock genre would be Grand Funk Railroad, The Locomotion. And The Locomotion was a #1 single by Grand Funk, and I actually had the 45. And I still love Grand Funk today. I don't listen to them as much, and they're not my favorite band, but they were definitely the first one that I remember listening to and really liking, and still like today. How about you?
So the first album I ever bought, I remember walking as just a young kid to the music store, and we had that funny recorder where you put it on the spinning wheel, and it had that gristly sound, but really made good sound on the phonograph. I bought Piano Man by Billy Joel, and to this day I still love the song Piano Man. That was a great album. I know Billy Joel, sometimes you either hate him or love him, but I still like Billy Joel. He's great in concert. He's not my favorite by far either. He's, in fact, I don't know if he's I guess he's in my top 20, but the Beatles were probably the first band I embraced as far as researching them, trying to learn a lot about them, and to this day, still my favorite band.
Yeah, mine would be Led Zeppelin on that one. So switch to me for a question, Richie. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. And this one, this is a good one, Richie. This one comes from our patron and music contributor, Eric Weaver. So the question is, in the past, people were buried with items that they would need in the afterlife. What would you want to be buried with so you could use in the afterlife?
I would like a set of dumbbells and a case of IPAs. So, because I figure
you got to explain that. You got to explain that.
I love working out, and I love working out as I get older with dumbbells. During COVID, I found you can do I don't have to go to the gym anymore. I can do an entire home workout with body weight and just dumbbells, and not even too heavy. So that would cover the keeping in shape. You're waking up out of a coma death. You're going to have some muscle depravity. And then to cap it off, I would probably have a case of Levante IPAs. And I could repeat that cycle every day.
I thought you were going to say a fire extinguisher because you may need it for where you are going.
Wait about that. Whoa.
Did you hear about the lady that her rich husband died and he had $10 million? And in his will reading, the executor said that he wants to be buried with all his money in his coffin. So the wife just wrote a check out and put it in there with it. So
wow, that was smart. That was very smart.
That was really bad, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was pretty bad. But
so what would I want to be buried with? And again, I didn't really see this question prior. Boy, I guess like I don't even know. Like I guess a book, the Bible maybe. I'm trying to think of like what would I do for eternity? I don't know. I guess I would say a book is what I'd want to be buried with.
Wow, you talk about excitement.
A dumbbell and IPAs. If you're plus, I mean, who knows if you're a spirit at that point? I mean, do you really need an IPA? I mean, come on.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
assuming
Seems kind of trivial.
I'm assuming Eric's referring to the, old school Egyptian mentality where all the stuff you're buried with, you use in a human-like spiritual afterlife.
Well, if that's the case, I'd like. Can they fit a Ferrari if they bury with me?
Yes,
I'd like.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll take a Ferrari. Probably a 430.
Yeah, you're
Ferrari
important enough
430.
to have them build a pyramid to house you, so we can fit a Ferrari in there.
Your turn, Richie. What's your next question?
This one comes from Sabrina Hess, recent college grad in the healthcare industry now from Springfield, Pennsylvania. Can you guys please break down the logic behind people wearing masks in their cars by themselves?
The only thing you actually brought this up on a Idiot, I think, a couple of weeks ago or a couple of episodes ago, but there is no logic to it. The only thing that I can think, because of course I've seen tons of these people as well. The only thing I can think of, Sabrina, is that they have it affixed and they don't want to kind of take it off and on, and they're going a short distance. So I found myself, believe it or not, the other day, I actually forgot to take the mask. I was in the Acme, I had the mask on, and I got my stuff. I got in the car, and I realized about 2 blocks after leaving the Acme that I hadn't taken my mask off. So I guess if you had seen me at that moment, Sabrina, I would have been one of those idiots. So that's the only thing I can logically answer, is that they either are super scared, and that's irrational, or they don't want to take it off and on and are going a short distance. What do you think, Richie?
I would say some people are forgetful, but this is for the weenie crowd that's afraid of their own shadow. This is for the people, right? We've talked about the polar extremes of attitudes toward COVID, from it doesn't exist, it's a hoax, to I will not leave my house unless I'm in a completely wrapped, hermetically sealed bodysuit. And these are the people that don't know the science and think that COVID lives in globular masses suspended in air for months, and that you can walk through it and you can drive through it if you have your heat or air conditioner or vent on in your car, and it will just envelope you and infect you.
Globular? That's a good word. Globular. I love that.
I don't use that word enough. But yeah, Sabrina, there's no logic to it. It's just people that are the most timid, afraid, scared, and nervous in the world.
All right, Richie, I got one for you. If you could ask a time traveler from 200 years in the future a question, what would it be?
So the time traveler would be from our Earth.
Yes. Our Earth, 200 years in the future, and he or she has been there, and you have a chance to debrief them. What would you ask them?
I would ask them do we have the technology now to do warp speed travel, like traveling through wormholes, to see if there is life on other planets. Is there other life in this galaxy? Do we even know that 200 years from now, I'm sure with the advanced technology of being able to either travel or see into the universe?
Yeah, and that would have been my answer too, but I'll just for fun, I'll deviate with a little bit of a snarky one. I would ask, what precipitated the fall of the U.S. empire? Like what specifically was the point where the U.S. empire, as it's existed now since World War II or even a little before that, when do we meet our decline? What was the main falling off point or tipping point of the U.S. decline? Because empires, unfortunately, folks, empires tend to not last forever. It's been throughout history, and history will probably repeat itself. And as you know from listening to this show, some of the trajectory that we're on, I don't think is a very good sign. I don't know any kind of timing, of course, but anyhow, that's what I would ask: is what was the point when the U.S. became less relevant? What do you think about that, Richie? Too dire?
No, we might be living that right now. We could be living in the beginning of the end of the empire based on what I'm seeing with this duopoly, as you like to call it. So no, I think it's a legitimate question.
All right, Richie, you're up. What do you got for me?
All right. This from Timothy Cardish, Glen Mills, Pennsylvania, legendary chief executive officer of multiple companies, has two quick questions for us.
Okay.
Will President-elect Joe Biden invite the Red Hot Chili Peppers to play Give It Away at the inaugural ball?
You may have triggered some of our crazy listeners by just saying President-elect Biden, because as we know, some people still think he isn't, which is, I guess, hashtag sad, I guess. But the Chili Peppers, no. Joe Biden is much more of he's a Corvette guy. He's probably a Billy Joel guy, a Beatles guy, maybe a Jimmy. No, he's probably the Everly Brothers. He could be an Everly Brothers type of guy. So Joe Biden. They're not around anymore, but I don't think they'll be inviting the Chili Peppers. I get his snarky tone to it, but no. What do you think?
Here's where I think it's possible, right? Because by the time the inaugural ball comes around, Joe Biden might be passed out, not even our president. The question then defers to, is Kamala Harris a 90s and 2000s grunge band fan? And then it's possible.
Right. But the whole Give It Away, I get the angle that he's going there. But as I've said on many shows, and including last show, it'd be pretty hard to top Trump from a Give It Away standpoint. I mean, there's probably no more socialist president that's ever lived or period in time. Ran up debt and socked our kids with debt and didn't pay for tax cuts, spent like a drunken sailor. So, I don't think the Democrats could do much worse, but hey, that's just me.
Well,
all right, Richie, you have a comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, Bernie Sanders could top that, but let's go to Tim's next question.
Okay.
Were those who wore or currently wear a niqab ahead of their time?
I don't know what is that? I don't even know.
A niqab, Niqab, is the face covering worn by many Middle Eastern people, and especially the women. So which is really a built-in mask where they are a part of their wardrobe is now COVID appropriate. So he's wondering, were they ahead of their time?
They were, and I guess a lot of the Asian cultures have been wearing literally face masks for a couple of decades after some of the pandemics that they've had there. So I think we're all going to be doing that. At least a lot of us are going to be doing this for a long time. So I guess I would say yes, they were ahead of their time. I thought it was a hijab or a kajab, or what's the other word? I'm not familiar with that word. I'll have to look it up when I'm
a burqa.
Burqa. There's a hijab or what? I forget that. I should be more cultured, and I'm not. So, all right, Richie, I have one from our good friend Darren Tapp, certainly a good patron of ours, and he said, with all this election spending, it looks like they're going to spend the election of 2020. A total spend is going to be north of $14 billion spent on the election. And now they're saying this Georgia runoff is going to be maybe $400 million just for that. Is there other ways to go about doing this? And do other countries do it this way? And so this could be a very long topic, but suffice it to say, there's many other countries, England, Norway, Russia, others that have public funding for elections. And you can only start on a certain date in many cases, and you have a certain amount of dollars to spend that the public contributes to it, and that's what you get to spend, and that's the time you're allowed to campaign and do it. So the little deeper explanation is, in this country, and again, I happen to like it this way because we have a lot of freedom in this country that other countries don't. The key decision by the Supreme Court was called Citizens United, and that was in 2010. And that basically, the Supreme Court ruled that it's a First Amendment violation to try to limit where you can donate to. And so the result of that, much to the chagrin of some people, not myself, is that there's a lot of PAC money and union money and certainly legal lobby money and corporate money and big donor money in politics. And our spending is outrageous. And a lot of people think that's wasteful. I just don't know the alternative. The alternative, I don't like all this money being spent on the election, but I don't like the alternative, which is government saying what you can and can't do with your money. So what do you think about that subject?
Well, that was a great question from Darren, but you turned that into a filibuster. So I'll keep my answer short.
I was preaching a little bit. I'll admit that.
Yeah, with the First Amendment, no. And capitalism, I don't see in our lifetime that changing.
All right, Richie, lay it on me. What's your next question?
This comes from Lloyd Conway of London, UK.
Nice.
Better known as Lord Conway, who has been possibly up for knighthood from time to time. He says,
did I see him on Downton Abbey, by the way?
He's an extra on that show.
Okay.
The UK government recently imposed a second national lockdown recently, when the average infections per 100,000 people is at roughly 200. This includes all bars, pubs, and restaurants being closed down. How is that New York closed their public school system when the average infections per 100,000 people was 3,000, yet bars, pubs, and restaurants remain open? One of us has got it very wrong. Who is it? The other side of the pond or this side of the pond?
Well, I'm not for any government required closures. So I think people should voluntarily not go out and protect themselves. But I don't like what I've said from the very beginning here is I don't like the fact that the government has decidedly picked winners and losers here in this. And I'm getting a little off subject, I realize, to the question. But, when they say Home Depot can stay open, but Joe's Corner Hardware has to stay shut, or some bigger food stores that serve food can stay open, but Joe's restaurant cannot, I think that's wrong. I think the government shouldn't do that. Everyone has different risk tolerances. If you want to protect yourself, you stay in and you take very little risk and you order food in and what have you. And, as far as kids, I think the schools should be, if they can staff them, they should let some people go according to their risk tolerance and some people will stay home. So that's kind of my shortest answer I can make on that very difficult question.
I think, Lord, I think both sides of the Atlantic have got it wrong. I think there's hypocrisy on both sides. The selective business choices and deciding some of the decisions, I think both sides got some of it right and both sides got some of it wrong. I don't think either side has a completely wrong or right.
That is a typical Rich Kroll, middle of the road, wishy-washy answer. Take a stand, for crying out loud. They got some right, they got some wrong. Come on now, that's weak.
I took a stance.
You took a stance. They got some right and some wrong.
Yes, that is my stance, and I stand by it.
Oh my goodness. All right, Did you ask that one? You asked that one. All right. All right. This one is from our buddy Alvaro, also a patron. Thank you for that. So what are we going to do? What are the people going to do and there was another question we had was kind of similar to this, with the post-COVID world, I guess we'll say it. And we had a show, Post-COVID World. I think it was episode 78. We made some prognostications about that. But in the post-COVID world, what industries are going to be drastically devalued, or what jobs, I guess, are going to be drastically devalued or eliminated, and how do those people evolve their skills, Richie? We talked about, commercial real estate. We talked about restaurants going out of business and all kinds of services that are in small retail oriented stuff. Obviously, schools and colleges we talked about on that show that could be evolving and shrinking. What are your thoughts on how people need to approach this from a future employment perspective?
They're screwed.
No, they need to evolve.
Well,
they have hope.
Think about a guy who's been in sales for 30 years, or painting for 30 years, or flipping burgers for 30 years. I don't know how you make a transition later in life. I think if you're younger, it's much easier, right? And a lot of times the path you start out in your first decade is not even close to what you end up in 20 or 30 years later. I would say hope for more Democrat bailouts.
Well, I say you're not guaranteed anything in life. You should always have that mantra. Even at 30 years in sales, I'm not guaranteed the next day of employment. You got to figure it out. It's up to you to figure it out. You got to evolve your skills. Nothing's guaranteed. Your job is not guaranteed. You got to figure it out and work and make ends meet and spend less than you make. How's that for a heartless an answer?
I expect the heartless answer from a mainline wealthy guy like you.
All right, hit me with one of those hard ones questions. You said you're going to direct some questions at me. I'm ready for it. I'm warmed up.
All right. This I'm going to hit you with two. Let me go back to back because it's government related here.
Okay.
So the first one is from Mike Paget, who was a guest of ours on our conspiracy show a while back.
Oh, boy.
Resident of Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, and Southern California. Born into the Southern Cal. Is it true by legal definition there is no president-elect until the Electoral College certifies the vote unless there is a concession by the other candidate? So because there is no concession right now and the vote has not been certified, by law, does this mean Biden is not president-elect? Why is the media and other politicians calling him president-elect? Follow-up question to this: is there an office of president-elect?
I don't know. I don't know definitively either answer, but by tradition, and and that's gone on for quite a long time. Once the vote is clear and everyone has kind of certified from a state perspective before the Electoral College votes, which is December 14th or something like that. I think it's just easy language to use and descriptive language. So yes, I guess he's not technically, there's no such thing as president-elect until the Electoral College votes. So Michael's right about that. But everyone who's not a crazed cultist knows that Joe Biden's going to be the next president. It's obvious. Trump's getting bashed in court day after day. He says these wild things on Twitter and in these press conferences, but in court they say other things. Yes, there's fraud. Yes, there's some fraud. Yeah, there was certainly fraud for the benefit of Trump too, I'm sure. That's been every election in the history of mankind. There's been some fraud, but everyone knows not enough to make a difference. So don't worry about it. Joe Biden's going to be the next president, and he may have an office of the president-elect, but I don't know. How's that for my answer?
Yeah, and part of it is there's still, media uncertainty caused by Trump's attempts to get recounts. And I agree that there's probably fraud. And I agree there's fraud on both sides. I would say we also have a majority left-wing press, which is going to get more say to make this controversial. But I also think it's going to be no shot. But
there is no shot. It's done. It's over.
So here's buckle in. This might be the question of the year.
Bring it on.
Not for our listeners who may fall asleep at it, but I think it's an excellent question, and it's targeted at you. And we're all going to wait with bated breath for your.
Boy, spontaneity is not my strength. I'll do my best.
Oh, you're going to need your University of Pennsylvania Wharton economics degree for this one.
And we only have a couple minutes left too, so I really have to move quickly. Okay.
This comes from Tim Meyer from Oakton, Virginia, who I know personally has 145 IQ.
Okay.
Here we go. Libertarians have long said that trade is something that happens between individuals and companies. All governments can do is get in the way. In the case where a foreign government runs or supported industries dump products at or below cost with the goal of putting domestic competition out of business, what is the appropriate remedy for impacted domestic producers, if not tariffs or importation taxes? Case in point, U.S. steel industry suffered under this dumping for 30 plus years, dramatically shrinking the U.S. steel industry and compromising our military strategic position. Or as someone said, your cheap dumped imports are your neighbor's pink slip.
Okay. So this is a very complex answer and probably not able to go through all the economics of it on this.
Well, let me sum it up this way. And also, due to time, try to sum it up as quickly as possible. I know you're so anti-tariff, all our listeners know that, but isn't this a pretty good example of when a tariff would make sense?
So what Tim forgets to point out is, first of all, that all libertarians don't say that is always the case. There are some governments, like big communist governments, that do buy a lot of stuff because they do so. So, but overwhelmingly, the majority of trade is between individuals and companies. So that is what libertarians say, not that it's only through them. So that's correction number one. Correction number two is you're presuming that there's no other places for steel. And yes, I understand that for defense, and all libertarians believe that we should provide for the common defense. And to defend our borders, you may need to make steel or be able to source steel from allies to build the requirements to defend yourself. And yes, you can't solely rely on a adversary. I won't call China an enemy, but an adversary could be Russia, could be Iran, whatever, for those sources. So in a free market, there would be multiple people around the world, because just like in every other industry, one person or one company or one country can't dominate and supply everything all around the world. So there's always going to be multiple sources. And in the worst case scenario, you protect your home industry if that's the only place you can produce it. I know semiconductors are often cited as another key defense industry. But just to shoot back at Trump, he placed tariffs on steel, and he said it was because of defense that we had to do it. And we source steel and oil from Canada and all other places around the world. So this China bashing is, we've lost on it. If you look at the data, the consumer prices have been raised drastically because of the tariffs, and it hasn't accomplished anything. He hasn't even lowered the trade deficit, which was the whole purpose of him doing it, at least in his eyes. So anyhow, we're getting too long in that, but maybe we'll have to do an economics show someday and talk in much more detail.
I hope not, but thank you for your answer. I have so many questions from listeners. I want to
let's go a couple rapid fire, and then I'll do one more, and then we'll have to close it out for this episode. And it looks like we're going to have a second one, Richie, in a couple days.
Yeah, it looks like it. So this one from Paul French, resident of Radnor, Pennsylvania, also a graduate of University of Virginia and a master's from Ontario County Community College. Asks, should the toilet paper roll have the end hanging from the front or back?
Oh, obviously from the front. That's when my kids put it on the back, I switch it immediately. Always from the front. How about you?
Well, I think if it's an open toilet roll, the front makes sense. But if it's in a stall, like in a a restaurant or a gym or public place where they have the covering over top of it, it's much easier to dispense from the back.
I don't agree with that because you can't rip it off in those stalls like that. If they're coming from behind, I mean, from the bottom, how do you rip it off? If you have that little flap down in the stall, then it just rips real easy.
Well, I think there's good reasons for both. All right, here's another one. This is from Johnny Glavachich, Westchester University student. After all these years of trying to figure out what is the truth about how many licks does it really take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
I forget, but like 30 years ago, someone actually did that. I forget what it was. I mean, it could have been 10,000. It could have been 100,000. I don't remember the number, but someone actually did that and tracked it. So we should be able to look that up somewhere.
I actually remember this.
Yeah.
Who was it? The University of Purdue Engineering Department created a licking machine modeled after the human tongue, and they came up with 364.
What?
Yep.
364.
Now, I don't know if this was a tongue like the lead singer of Kiss, but
Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons' tongue they modeled it after, but that's what they came up with. Here's another one. This one's anonymous. Why are major roads where you drive your car called a parkway and an area where you park your car called a driveway?
That sounds like a Stephen Wright bit.
I think this actually might have come from Stephen Wright.
Here's the last one from my side, Richie. Then we're going to have to adjourn. What invention has been most important in the human race, and what has been most important in your lifetime? That's a good one for you, Mr. Science.
Yeah, I'm going to go with electricity.
For all time, what about
for all time?
Your lifetime?
For me, I'm going to say the 16-ounce can.
To fill your IPAs, put in your coffin in the afterlife.
Yeah, I would drink the 12 ounces way too fast, and I need those for my coffin.
That's your serious answer, or that's just your funny answer?
I don't know. I'd have that. Off the cuff, I'd have to think about what I really. I guess the smartphone, cell phone.
Not the microprocessor. I think that's in my lifetime, the microprocessor would be.
Well, I'm productizing the microprocessor and saying
productizing. Wow, that's a little harder, but
I just did the smartphone.
Okay, and I guess electricity. Although some people say that paper would be right up there with electricity as the invention of all time, but I don't know. That's a really good question, and there's so many good answers. I mean, the printing press, electricity, water purification. I mean, water purification's done a lot of amazing things. Refrigeration, air travel. Wow. I mean, there's so many unbelievable ones. But in my lifetime, the microprocessor, I think, would be number one. So, Richie, before we adjourn, any final comments on this? And this is going to turn out to be a part one. And we're going to have to get together again in a couple of days here, Richie, and do a part two because we got a lot of content.
Yeah, and to that point, I have a lot of listeners that I did not get to today. I want to assure you, I promise, I will read your questions in the next show. There's some excellent questions I didn't get to, and I will read every one of them on the next show.
So we'll try to make a little shorter answers maybe the next show. Is that what
you will try to come up with shorter answers and get out of the filibuster.
Okay, you need to be more succinct in your questioning. Then that's what
I see.
But anyhow, so that's this episode, folks. But as we just heard, we're going to have to do this again in another few days. Look for part 2 of the episode coming up. It should be fun. And as always, please remember, if what you hear or see sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See you all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. please download, subscribe, share, and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also our website.